Welcome to another one of those videos where I sit down and talk about a topic that I think is important. And recently, the Overwatch 2 developers released a blog post. It's going to be a two-part series where they take a deep dive on matchmaking competitive, where they kind of explain how everything works under the hood and how the MMR system is determined and how it factors into like creating your matches and all that sort of stuff. And if you guys want to read the full blog post, because I'm going to kind of like pick and choose some things to talk about that I think are important, kind of give my opinion about it, and I'll also do another follow-up video when they release part 2. But if you want to read the full thing, I'll link it in the description. First, they start off by saying ultimately the goal of matchmakers is to create as fair matches as possible across all game modes. We know matchmaking can be a source of frustration, especially competitive, and we like to recognize it doesn't always feel like it's meeting its goal, right? Then they go into talking about the internal matchmaking rating, which is what the MMR is, the MMR system. And they basically said that the matchmaking system is designed to create balanced matches, right? They try to approximate each player's skill, and they give you like a numerical value. They even show a graph that I'm going to put on screen that shows the current distribution of quick play MMR for the player base, right? So like most people are sitting around the middle, obviously, and then you have like the outliers on both ends, the really dog shit players, and then the gods that sit upon the top 500 ranking, right? And this is for QP, but it kind of follows a similar system in competitive, right? Every game follows a similar system, right? They have the worst players at the bottom of the bell curve goes up, the majority of people, and then it goes down the god, right? Every game works this similar system, and your goal is to kind of get it around the middle, right? Where like 0 is here, the majority of people are around 0, and then you have the big outliers and the bottom outliers as well, right? But in the section where they're explaining the MMR, they talk about something interesting that I mentioned in my previous video, and they say, we only adjust your MMR after you win or lose a game, or if you come back after not playing for a long time. Your MMR is unaffected when we lower your rank at the beginning of a season, and every one of your matches has similar MMR as you, right? And they mentioned that, and I mentioned that in the last video where I talked about the rank system, and I said that's stupid because let's say you take a break for a week and then you come back and everyone that you've been playing against or who was like also shifted down is back in diamond, and you're visually playing against people in diamond but you're still in plat, and it kind of creates a discrepancy, right? But they even mention a bigger point here, which says initial rank matches can feel turbulent because many players return at the beginning of the season, and anything that changes player population is going to affect the matchmaker, which is also a crazy thing that I didn't even take into account. Let's say I get diamond at the beginning of the season, and then I kind of take a break from the game and come back at the beginning of the next season to play, and I haven't played in 2-3 weeks, but my underlying MMR is diamond still, and it's going to place me with you. Let's say you played the whole season, you were grinding, you were actively playing, and you're still actively playing. It'll put us in the same game because it thinks we're at the same skill level, but I actually have not played the game in a while. Like, I am actively not going to be as good as I was when I was playing the game consistently, right? That's just how it works. But they're going to, just because of the skill base and the number, we're the same to them. And because the population shifted up, it's going to create more variance, which is another just interesting thing to think about. Like is it even worth playing your rank matches at the beginning of the season? Because now the influx of player bases is going to make the matchmaker worse. It's just something that they added that I think is really interesting. They also say it's important to remember that our teammates are human and we don't always perform the same from game to game, even team fight to team fight, which is obviously, obviously people, there's variables in every single game you play. Individual team performances mean that the matchmaker need the results of as many games as possible to get an accurate representation of your skill, which is also something interesting in that section. But basically, the most important thing that I got from the MMR section of this blog post was basically saying that when they go to compile the game that you're in, what you see, that little gold, that plat, that diamond, that master's GM, that doesn't mean shit. The number at the bottom that's hidden from you is what they use to determine to put the people in your game. That number is what they use to get people into your game. That's it. They could be silver but have the MMR of a plat because they've been on a win streak and they've been streaking, and they'll put you in your game because you guys have similar MMR, right? Like, let's say you're in plat but you've been like kind of like hard stuck going 7-7, not really moving, and this silver guy's like climbing fast and it hasn't pushed his visual rank up. He'll still be in silver playing with plats, right? Like, it's just an underlying number that goes up or goes down, and that's what they use to create the games. Next thing they went to was skill variation within groups, which is a really interesting concept, and I think probably one of the more important things that they talked about in this whole article, because they said they're working to like fix a lot of the issues within the skill variation of groups. Basically, they start off by saying, we love seeing you group up and have fun together because we believe Overwatch is a game best shared with friends. Grouping up does, however, influence the matchmaker in different ways, right? Obviously, if you play like with your friend who's in gold, platinum, you both have different MMRs, and now you've caused the system to kind of meet somewhere in the middle or create a distribution that is kind of uneven, right? Because your friend is significantly worse than you. So now it needs to compensate by putting a member of equal or higher skill in the enemy team to balance out the game, right? But the problem is, and what they mentioned in this, is when players group together, there's a possibility that the group has a larger skill difference than the match we typically like to make. Those of you at a very high skill level might notice these skill differences more too, because there are far fewer players at the very top of the MMR curve, right? And they say we can't always avoid these type of matches, but we can make it feel better. These matches can often feel imbalanced if they create situations where there's a large discrepancy of skill within a single role between the two teams. And they go on to tell you an example. We might match a highly ranked tank against a comparably lower rated tank. So even if the overall match is balanced, the competition between tanks feel very one-sided. And that's where we get a lot of the diff going, right? Let's say I'm a plat to diamond level DPS, right? And I'm queuing with my friend Honey, who's like a gold level support, right? So we get into the game and they need to put someone of my skill level into the game, right? To balance out the teams, to create a balanced overall match. But they're not going to put them in the DPS role. They just pick somebody. So now the tank, who on my team might be like gold 2, is playing against a plat 5, plat 4, plat 3 tank. And he is just going to get rolled because one person is significantly better than the other because they're at a higher rank. They are better at the game than them, theoretically, right? That creates imbalances in roles, which can cause the tank diff, the DPS diff. And what's really good that they mentioned in this blog post is that they're going to change that, right? It says, we've got changes coming in the game over the next few months, which will drastically reduce these disparities. We're trying to find pairings of similarly rated players in each of the roles when making the matches, right? So let's say I'm a damage plat diamond player, right? When they create the match, they're going to put on the enemy team a diamond or plat damage player and create the balance for the roles that we both play, which will greatly reduce the skill disparity in the game because the two people who are high level are going to be playing against each other. They're going to be doing the same role and they're going to be battling it out, right? Instead of just putting a high level tank against a low level tank to balance the overall game. You go to say, we'll try to find pairs of similar rated players in each role when making a match. For supports and damage roles, which have 2 slots, each player will be paired with one player on the opposite team. There will still sometimes be matches with large ranges of differently skilled players, but in that case the two teams will be more like mirror images of each other, which is interesting the way that they worded it. And I think this is like a really good change, and this might actually fix a lot of the matchmaking issues that a lot of people have been having. And then they end the skill variation within a group section by saying, however, even with these improvements, there will always be times when we make matches that have a skill disparity that isn't reflected in MMR because some players in the matches aren't calibrated. We've seen this much more frequently since Overwatch 2 launched, and we welcomed a large influx of new players. And in that last paragraph, to close out the skill variation group, they mentioned something that was really interesting that's going to segue to the next point. I think the next important thing that they mentioned in this thing, that is, some players aren't calibrated because they're new. In the final section of the blog post, they talk about setting up new players for success, right? And they go into a lot of detail about how basically new players that were new to Overwatch 2 have been basically having a really bad time trying to like get calibrated with the game and like understand, because it's a diverse hero roster, right? With a ton of characters, a ton of maps, different game modes, and an Overwatch 1 veteran, even though they're not good, let's say they have the same mechanical skill as someone else, they'll just have more knowledge about the game, so they'll just win more often than someone else, right? That's new to the game because they don't know combos, ult economy, a bunch of stuff, right? That a new player will have no idea, but like someone who's been playing Overwatch 1, even though they might not be as mechanically gifted, they'll just know that inherently because they've been playing the game for so long. So what they did for new players is that they basically made it so their matchmakings were easier. So if you were a new player, your matches were much easier because at the beginning of the season they noticed that new players were having an egregiously low win rate in comparison to older players in the same rank. So basically what they did to combat this is they reduced the starting MMR of new players to that equivalent of like a bronze 5. And when they did that, they saw like a massive improvement to new players and improving their win rate to like above 50%, which was before below 40%, which is crazy, right? And there's even a graph to show like the difference in the win rate when they switched their equivalent MMR to bronze 5 and how it went up 20%, right? And you might be asking yourself, Matt, how is this relevant to what you said about calibrating a player, right? If they're at such a low MMR, how are they in my gold, plat, diamond games? And this is where the word calibrated comes into play. They mentioned in the article, basically what it says is that the MMR system, the more games it has, the more it is able to put you or get you to the rank where you are meant to be at, right? So what will happen is if you're a new player and you get put in that bronze 5, but then you start to do really well because your mechanical skill is very high, you're just going to, even if you don't know how the game works, you're just going to pick soldier or something stupid and just slap people, right? Because you're so mechanically gifted. So you go 7-0 and now it boosts your MMR a lot. And then you go 7-0 again and then it boosts your MMR even more. And now you're getting to the MMR of someone, let's say me, who's mechanically skilled at the game, but also has a lot of knowledge. So I will be able to play in the same game as you, right? And the problem is that the MMR system hasn't had enough games from you as a new player to calibrate where you truly belong. So what's happening is in your diamond games, you're getting people who don't deserve to be in diamond, but because they're just winning so much in lower ranks, it's pushing their MMR so high because it hasn't truly been able to calibrate them. And this was an issue in Overwatch 1 where like people's main accounts were like hard stuck bronze. Then they would make a new account because they did really well in their starting games. They would get pushed straight to plat. And then you'd hear people on Reddit saying, oh, I'm just stuck in elo hell on my main. Look at me, I got plat on an alt account off rip, right? But then if they were to keep playing on that alt account, they would slowly start to lose rank and get pushed back down to where they belonged, because the way it works is that it'll boost you up because you're performing well in like such a short period of time on a new account. But then once it gets enough information to understand where you actually belong, it'll take you to where you actually belong. And only until you show the MMR system with enough quality games that you have improved, it will then slowly push you forward. But the problem is new players are getting put into these high level lobbies because the system in the back end, which is causing disparities in your rank games, right? So you're in a diamond lobby and you're playing with someone who is not really of a diamond caliber, but because they haven't played enough games, but they've been winning, the game is like, well, we need to see how they'll perform here. We need to put them in this game to see if they'll get shit on. And the problem is they'll put them on your team and then they'll get shit on and you'll lose the game. And obviously they know that that's not a good system. And they obviously even mention that. They say the faster we can calibrate new players in MMR, the fewer unfair matches we'll create, not just for that player, but for the other 9 people in the match, right? They believe overall this is a huge improvement to the new player experience. And I kind of want to agree with them. Now that I understand how the system works in the back end, I understand why sometimes I'll get an unfair match, right? Especially at the beginning of a season. Towards the beginning of the season, I noticed that it was a lot easier to win games. I started off the season 7-0, 7-0, 7-2. And I was able to climb very, very easily. But now the games have started to calibrate more towards where I belong, and also more towards probably the new players that influxed on season 2 where they belong, right? So like I might have been getting put into games with new people and I might have just been able to just watch them, right? And they're getting calibrated like at like a lower rank now, and I'm getting calibrated to more like where my player base actually belongs. The games are starting to become more even, more normal, with quotation marks obviously, right? Because there's still the issue of like, because I queue mostly with my friends and we have a skill disparity, that thing that I mentioned earlier happens where like you get a diamond tank against a gold tank, and then I'm a diamond DPS and I'm expected to perform in a different role at the higher level and out DPS the DPSs, which happens, right? Obviously, because like I'm a diamond DPS against gold or plat DPSs, I perform better, right, on average. But then the diamond tank performs better than the gold tank, and it becomes like this like coin flip of like, well, how these situations pan out, right? And then they go into their final thoughts. We continue to analyze data, tune values, and evaluate more changes to the matchmaker. Our highest hopes is to make a match that feels fun for everyone, even the team that loses. We feel strongly that the best way to achieve this is by making matches that are fair and balanced as possible. And now we're going to get to my final thoughts on this whole article. Obviously, there's going to be a part 2, and I'm going to make a video for that as well. But I don't want to be rambling for too long, so I'm going to try to close this out as quickly as possible, put a little bow on it, and give my opinion, right? First of all, I'm happy that Blizzard is continuing to be extremely transparent and give the users and player base that play their game every day more information about how the game works. I'm also happy that they're making the game more accessible to new players. That is so good, because the more new players, the more the game grows, the more the longevity of this game will be, etc., etc. I am not happy about how the current state of the matchmaker is, that if I am in diamond and my friends are in gold, that they create a match to be equally balanced, but they don't equally balance it between each of the roles, which creates role disparity. But they are fixing that, which is fantastic. So hopefully in the next few months, when I queue with my friends and I get into a game, the enemy team will have a diamond tank and I will be a diamond tank, or the enemy team will have a diamond damage and I'll be a diamond damage. And like they said, it'll create a mirror image of the teams, which will then allow us to play the roles against each other at the higher level and actually have a chance to create a more properly balanced match across the board. And hopefully as more players and more of the new players get calibrated, you'll have less of those unfair matches that you've been getting where like you feel like your teammates don't know what the hell is going on. Why are they in my diamond game? But in, let's say in a month or two, that won't be happening, because that player that got pushed into that diamond game because he was performing a little too well in his first few games is going to get pushed back down to the rank where he belongs, and then now he has to climb back up to where you are, and by the time he gets there, he hopefully will have improved as a player to actually belong there. But yeah, that's the end of the video, and don't forget to leave a like rating, and in the comment section down below, let me know what you guys think about this blog post. All in all, like I said, I'm super happy. Blizzard, keep giving us more information, and if you guys want to read the whole thing, check it out. It'll be like the first thing that I link in the description. All right, see you guys in the next video. Peace, I love you all.
Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 sticky, come get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me.